Want to welcome everybody to Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close as we're recapping better second half than first half if you look at the last 10 minutes, but overall a disappointing loss in West Lafayette, 87-68 at the hands of probably the best team in this conference. And I'm pleased to be joined by Coach Gary Close in just a second. Before we get to Gary, before we throw him in the mix here, I want to give a special thank you to RTI Threads. They've been with us through football season and now with basketball season as well. And they're partnering with a bunch of great Iowa athletes, only expanding their coverage. Marty Millard and the guys over at RTI Threads in North Sioux City. They've got partnerships with Cooper DeJean, Aaron Graves, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, Zack Lutmer, and folks more in the mix here coming from RTI Threads. Check out all their great merchandise and support the causes of all these athletes and their NIL opportunities. Visit rtithreads.com to check out the different lines, rtithreads.com. And if you want to support Cooper DeJean and his apparel line, it's cd3lacesup.com. Well, let's, without further ado, let's join Mr. Gary Close. Coach Gary Close. Coach, it's good to see you again, sir.
Do you have a clothesline too?
Do I have a clothesline too? Did I say something about a clothesline?
With that group, attire.
Oh, clothing line. Gary, your last name is Close. So when you say clothes, I'm like, you saying clothes or close? You know what? I do, but I think it's safe to say that those guys that we just talked about have more popular apparel lines,
Gotcha.
Especially the guy that was listed first. I think Cooper's a little bit more popular than Corey. But Gary, it's good to see you. First of all, before we get to the nitty gritty of this one, it's just great to be back with you for another season and Big Ten basketball specifically. This is a really good Purdue team that beat Iowa tonight. I know they lost Friday against Northwestern. And we've got Tom Kher of HawkeyeReport.com who will also be joining us here for a few minutes in just a second. But can you kind of talk about the challenges that come with playing in West Lafayette? I know your Badgers did it with Matt Painter on the opposite side a number of times.
Yeah, it's one of the tougher places to play in the league. And the timing wasn't good, having lost, to Northwestern a few days before, first Big Ten game at home. And so you knew they were going to get Purdue's absolute best shot, and they did. And Purdue's good. I mean, they were number one ranked for a reason, and I think they'll be up there all year long. And so there aren't going to be very many teams that will win there, maybe none. And so I like the way Iowa battled. It wasn't a lack of effort. I thought they played very hard. Just Purdue's good, and Purdue was on all cylinders tonight, and there wouldn't be very many teams would have beat them tonight.
I want you to get fairly analytical here to start. I know Zach Edey's a handful. I get it. And I don't have the answer. And I'm not saying you have the ultimate answer. Obviously, Fran and the staff, they're game planning for Zach Edey. They've faced him a number of times. How would you game plan defensively, given Iowa's lack of size? They don't have a true 7-footer like they have in past years. How would you game plan against Zach Edey?
I asked myself that question, and I'd like to watch a little more tape with Purdue to come up with an answer. But, if they're hitting threes as well as being able to score inside, they're really going to be hard to defend. He is so big. You try to limit his touches, but he's so big, that's hard to do. So I think you're kind of hoping that they don't shoot very well for three, and you can play not as extended and give as much help as possible, and try not to foul him to give him easy points, and try to limit him to one shot and make his touches as difficult as possible, as far out as possible. But he's a handful. It's going to be he's the National Player of the Year for a reason. So and they were obviously ready to play tonight.
Purdue extending this lead. I guess I don't have the final numbers in front of me yet, but 30, trying to think of the largest lead, 37, 36, somewhere in there. And I thought Iowa, I give them credit. You mentioned the fight. I thought Iowa really fought those last 10 minutes. It didn't seem like we saw a lack of effort or a drop of tenacity or just anything inside. And they struggled to get on the glass when Zach Edey was in the game, but took advantage of him being out in the last 10 minutes and closed this thing to 19 to end the game.
Yeah, that's one thing. You'd love to get him into foul trouble some way, somehow, and get him off the floor. But they scored so well that it took away Iowa's transition opportunity. You'd like to run it down there before he can get set up and try to get some easy baskets. Iowa didn't get very many easy baskets. today, partly because they were taking the ball out of their net a lot.
One thing Robbie Hummel talked about, and I know you coached against Robbie. Robbie is really, I think, one of the best in the business as it relates to just analysis of the game during the game. And one thing Robbie kept going back to was something I voiced concerns to you in our preseason show, a month or two ago, about regarding just who the alpha dog is, who's the go-to guy offensively on this team. And I know there's a lot of preseason attention to Peyton Sandfort. And I expressed some concerns about just the consistency of some of Iowa's more veteran players, including Peyton, including Tony Perkins, and then a new face, just in Ben Krikke, who's probably been their most consistent, or most certainly has been their most consistent force offensively. Where do you stand after watching this game? Obviously, the best opponent they've played all year. Who's their go-to guy right now? Do they have one?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be more by committee unless someone emerges, and that's okay. You can do that. There are going to be years where you don't have that. Iowa's been fortunate that that's not been the case. They've had some really good players, NBA players, the last few years. So someone could emerge. Right now, that hasn't happened, but the season's early. But they can still be a successful team without something like that. Maybe it's not as easy, but it's not impossible.
Just like we did with football this year, bringing a slightly new feature to the show. In addition to Tom Kher, who will be joining us in just a moment, we've got an RTI Threads player of the game, and Tony Perkins is our player of the game this evening with 12 points and 6 rebounds. And Gary didn't shoot a great percentage. You look at his numbers on the night, he was 5 of 14. But I thought his effort level, I feel like ever since, was it the first half against Oklahoma down in San Diego, ever since then, he's had a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He needs to play with that chip. I mean, I don't know if he's skilled enough to be a guy who's going to be a go-to guy late in the game, but he does have the physicality, the athleticism to be a guy who can kind of bring it with leadership on the court by example. Just talk about his game tonight, even though he struggled from the field.
Yeah, and he's probably their most accomplished player, most experienced player. He had his moments. I agree. He did not shoot real well. Purdue can do that to you. Purdue can get you to, play a little quicker than maybe you'd like in a half-court situation. But like you said, I thought he battled and competed. 6 rebounds against that team is strong for a guard, and he's a solid player that obviously Iowa needs to play well, especially against a team like that, to be able to compete. So I think for the most part, he handled himself well tonight.
How important is it that guards crash the glass in a game like this where you're having to do everything you can just to keep Zack Edey off the glass?
Well, and even on the defensive end, you just almost got a rebound by committee. The first half they got they had a couple of possessions where they gave up 2 or 3 offensive rebounds and ended up being a basket, and they're hard enough to guard as it is, and then if you're giving them second and third shots, it makes it even more difficult. So with a guy like that, you've got to get everybody contributing. Whether it's a long rebound or a loose ball or something to try to, and I think for the most part, other than a couple of flurries, they handle themselves okay on the glass.
All right, I'm going to throw the link for everybody if people want to call in, ask Coach Close a question. I'll throw that up in the live chat. Gary, you think anybody's been drinking this evening?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, you have not, so I commend you. But for those that have, please be. The game, I mean, when you're down 36, all bets are off on that. But let's go ahead and welcome Tom Kher of HawkeyeReport.com. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Hi, Tom. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, Tom, you've covered a number of these games. I mean, this isn't your first rodeo as it relates to problems in Mackey Arena.
No.
How would you? I mean, I can tell you're home. You're not in West Lafayette. Yeah. You and I have both. We've all had kind of a long week with the Big Ten title game in Indianapolis. But talk a little bit about the story this evening and how has it been? How is it the kind of the same maybe than past experiences there at Purdue?
Yeah, I've been to a few of these where at Mackey where it's just been 30-point type games. So it just I kind of expected it when. When Purdue lost on Friday night, I was like, boy, Matt Painter's going to have them ready to go on Monday. And you're walking into one, and you knew they were going to come out strong, and they did, and they just kept building that lead in the first half. And then when Gillis hits that three at the end of the first half, there's just no way you're going to come back from that. And Jones came out early in the second half, played really well, I thought, got them 5 quick points. And that kind of out of any of the sales that Iowa might have had coming in the second half. So just, you knew this was going to happen. I think the key thing for Iowa, and maybe Coach Close can address this, is how do you respond to this? Because you've got the short turnaround going to Ames in an atmosphere that's going to be just as hostile as Mackey, if not worse, because, Purdue fans, they're just there to be loud against Iowa. Against Iowa State, the Iowa State fans are there to be loud and obnoxious and rude and everything else. So that's part of the rivalry.
Yeah, that's why it's a great rivalry. And it always, I can't remember some unbelievable games at Hilton Coliseum. I think they got to put this one away quickly and just move on. It's like you said, the chance of winning this game were not probably great, especially after the loss. I don't think many teams are going to win there all year long. So it's not a crushing loss from that standpoint. So, maybe you watch the tape here. There's a few things you got to work on, but then you got to move on to Iowa State and get yourself ready to play in a big in-state rivalry game against a good team. So it's a very daunting schedule for this week.
Robbie Hummel brought up the guard play at Northwestern. I don't know if you caught any of that game over the weekend, Gary, but what does Northwestern seem to do that seems to give Purdue problems? Because Zack Edey got his with 34 and I think 16.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of the game. The Northwestern guards were terrific. Both guards were phenomenal. They shot well. They took care of the ball. I think Boo Buie had 9 assists and no turnovers and 30 points. But Purdue was really in control of that game for a good part of it. But then they kind of let Northwestern hang around. They made some big shots and some big plays and kind of let Edey get his points, but didn't let anybody else really hurt him to a great extent. The Purdue guards did not play nearly as well as they did tonight. And part of that was that Northwestern's got some good, experienced, talented guards that played well.
Yeah, Boo Buie played terrific, and he's as good as there is in the country at the guard position this year. And he just really and Purdue was, I think, 5 of 19 from 3 in that game Friday. So, Lawyer and Smith just didn't play well tonight. They have, the thing that jumps out at me is I always look at assist, field goal and field goals, and 24 assists and 34 field goals. That's a really nice percentage for Purdue. And they really, the thing I thought in the second half, and Robbie Hummel was pointing it out quite a bit, they attacked Iowa's pressure. And a lot of teams will just get it past half court and kind of try to run their offense, where Jones and Edey and everybody else were just attacking Iowa and getting some very easy buckets.
Yeah. I charted the first half. It was really kind of an amazing stats. I think Purdue had 10 layups for 20 points. Some of those, as Tom mentioned, off the pressure. They made 6 threes. So there's 18 points to 20 from the layups, and they made 7 free throws. That's literally all their points. So they never had to make a 2-point jump shot. It was either a layup or a 3 or a foul. And that's high efficiency offense, to say the least, and gave them a lead that couldn't
10 offensive rebounds. 10 offensive rebounds in the first half, 7 of them by Edey. I mean, you just can't. You're that's why you're down.
They missed 5 or 6 layups in addition to making 10, and so they hardly missed any, if at all, any 2-point jump shots. It was pretty much threes and right around the rim. So that's pretty high.
They were also 6 of 17 from 3 in that first half. It felt like all 17 of those threes were open. It's not like they weren't missing shots. They just couldn't contain the rebound. I mean, they got, you're just desperately trying to get Edey away from the ball. And, even when they were able to do that, Mason Gillis slips in or someone else slips in for a rebound. And I mean, you can't give teams, especially like Purdue, 2, 3, 4 chances on a possession. You're just going to get burned.
Yeah, that happened twice, and I think both possessions ended in a made three. That's 6 points right there. So, no, I agree. It was, but as we said from the very beginning, Purdue's talented. I mean, they're a number one team in the country for a reason, and they're well coached, and you knew they were going to be prepared and disappointed by the way they played. And so it would have taken I'm not sure any team would have beat them tonight at Purdue.
They're so deep too. I mean, when you can go to Gillis and Ethan Morton and guys like that off of your bench, Roosevelt Colvin's kid who's coming in there, a young guy, giving him some contributions, athletic player. I mean, they go in easy 10 deep with quality players. I mean, Morton was a starter on that team. Gillis a starter. Killed first, the starter for them in the past too. I mean, they got a lot of talent on that team, a lot of depth of good players.
Well, you saw what they did in Maui. they played three really good teams and won them all, and that probably had something to do with them losing at Northwestern. So, no, that's a really, really good basketball team.
Gary, I know we always talk about how hard it is to win in the tournament, especially when you one and done format. But why does Purdue seem to struggle winning in March when we see nights like tonight where they look almost unbeatable?
I would guess they don't shoot the three well, and then when they don't do that, then teams don't have to extend as much, and they can build a fortress around Edey, and maybe they get them in foul trouble but like you said, when the tournament's one and done, it's a little bit different. Those shots don't start dropping, and you start thinking about things, and that's why the tournament is like it is. So, but I would guess they did not shoot well from three in those losses, and then you can play them a little bit different if they're not. Tonight they made enough that they had to be respected.
And Iowa's non-conference schedule was not some gauntlet, but I will say this, having been to CHI to game at Creighton, watching this game, knowing they come here to Ames, to Hilton, I mean, for the first month, those are some crazy road environments. And I get it. Iowa's not played a great home schedule. It makes me a little bit, well, I shouldn't say a little bit, very depressed as I compare it to what we've seen at Carver. We talk about that every year. It's a discussion for another day, but it is amazing some of these road environments Iowa has. I just hope, regardless of what happens Thursday, that fans show up Sunday. I just feel like you got to get at least one of these this week. Am I wrong on that, Gary?
No, I think that's you got to win at home. And Michigan is a team that's not, at least not right now, is one of the top teams in the league. They're struggling in some ways. So no, I think you're right. I think they need to get at least one.
Well, Tom, I don't know when the latest media availability was with Fran, but is there anything? I mean, the only other thing I wanted to ask you about, I don't know that Fran's been asked formally in a press conference about it, but I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen more run from Evan Braun's in spurts, just because of what he showed, albeit at not didn't play a ton of minutes at Belmont, but does bring them physicality and rebounding, and especially in a game against such a talented big. And I know he's even undersized, but he played a little bit in the second half. Are you surprised that Braun's hasn't gotten some run here or there?
A little bit, but it's like he's the 11th player, and it's just hard to play 11. It's hard to play 10, but I think that's the biggest thing. It just hasn't. It's hard to find minutes for him when you're going to try and get Ben Krikke back out there. You're going to have Owen Freeman out there, Laje Dembele out there. You want to get Peyton out there playing the 4 too, so you get a little mismatch there. It's just hard to get him the minutes more than anything else.
Yeah. Tom, anything else to add? We look forward to having you on here and there for post-game coverage throughout the season.
Yeah.
I know you'll be a part of what is your typical travel schedule for road games? I mean, how often? I know you got a full crew. You got Kyle. You've got Blair. I mean, what's HawkeyeReport.com's schedule for men's basketball coverage?
Is get to as many of the road games as I can, get to all the home games, but Kyle's going to be handling Thursday because I'm having my knee scoped on Thursday, so he'll be handling Ames, and but I'll be back at it on Sunday, and Iowa City at Carver Hawkeye. So we're good.
Best of wit. I don't think it's. I hope you don't take offense to me saying this, Tom, but I saw you in the press box and you were moving like you needed your knee scoped on Saturday. So please get that taken care of because we need
to get the right one, Tom.
Yeah, that's yeah. I'm gonna put a big sign that says, "Please fix the left knee." The right knee is already bad anyway. It's bone on bone in that one. So too much basketball over the years.
Those stairs at Carver are not going to help the issue. So get that knee taken care of.
If they ask you if it's your left knee, don't say right.
Correct, Tom.
Exactly.
Tom Kher at HawkeyeReport.com. Tom,
thanks,
appreciate
guys.
you jumping on here.
Good to see you, Tom.
Thanks, guys.
All right. We are open to take a few phone calls, and we've got Doug on hold. We've got Ryan. Our phone line's open, 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601 as we recap Iowa's 87-68 loss to Purdue. As I was watching the final number appear on the screen and Price Sanford, I hope that last three helps him. He's been cold. I mean, I think he's going to get going. He's a really good shooter. In fact, I kind of thought he might be the most important freshman heading into the year. He's maybe contributed less than the other three, but I digress. I looked at this final score, 87-68, and it just felt eerie, and I couldn't think of why that score was so significant. So for our callers that are in the chat, the queue, maybe you can I found out why. I researched this and found out why 87-68 is kind of a depressing score. So we'll get to that in just a second. I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Iowa Smokehouse. They're with us for another basketball season. And look at this great variety of snacking products, whether we're talking about their beef sticks, their jerky, maybe it's their steak bites or barbecue sauces, their salsas, great for snacking on game day. Tasting is believing. Visit iowasmokehouse.com to browse their expanded lineup and get it sent right to your front door. Any $50 order gets free shipping. You'll also get an extra 15% off when you use this code Hawkeyes. That's plural, the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. Visit today and support Iowa Smokehouse and the cause here at From the Hawkeye of the Storm. All right, let's go to our first caller. We've got Doug on hold. Doug, any reason why 87-68 makes a knot in my stomach?
I'm looking it up. It's either the Gonzaga or Villanova score.
It's both. It's back-to-back NCAA losses, 87-68.
Really? Hey, I should get credit that I knew that there was an NCAA game. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I was telling people I'm like Rain Man. Did you see that movie? Even though I'm talking about, Corey?
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
Rain Man with Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen the full length. I've seen it on television. I mean, back growing up, I remember it being on. But I don't think I've ever actually seen the whole thing.
Well, here's because people talk about Purdue and people always want to say how we have a lack of NCAA tournament success. Do you know the last team Purdue played against in the Final Four? Coach, Corey?
Sure he would.
Well, it was probably
it was with Joe Barry Carroll.
Yeah, was it Iowa?
It's Iowa.
There you go.
Iowa was the last team that Purdue played in the Final Four in a third-place game where Ronnie Lester was hurt.
Well, they did have
that's amazing. Yeah,
they did make a nice run. What, Elite Eight a couple of years ago with Carson Edwards, right? Am I correct?
And the big dog made the Elite Eight, I think, right?
He might have. Yeah, I don't.
There was a year there when I first started watching you guys that this isn't new, the March stuff. There was a year 95, we had only two teams in the second round. The Big Ten struggles in March. It's not. We haven't had a championship since 2000. And if you've asked Ames people, it was a block. No, it's a charge. Paul Shirley, that 2000. I still have to talk to people about 2000, the Michigan State game here in Ames. But I still believe I WL'd this team, coach, at 18-13 before the season. Thought they'd probably go 13-3, 14-2 at home. Nothing's changed. I still think it's a bubble team. Zach Edey's really good. Their transfer from Southern Illinois, really good. Smith, I thought was having a bad game. Then watched what he was doing and realized Smith is a very, very good player. And he only had 2 points. So that's a game we're going to struggle against. A team we're going to struggle against. I'm not too worried about Iowa State. Iowa State's leading rebounder is another fellow Ames High alum, and he's only 6'2" with Lipsy. Lipsy is their Iowa State's leading rebounder at six a game. I think King and Jones aren't that good of big men, and I think our big men are going to eat them up on Thursday. They might not, but
eat them up. They're going to eat them up.
Freeman's don't.
Yeah, they're going to eat. Just eat. They're going to eat all night, Doug. So, real quick, I'm just curious. You're a biggest homer in the land. Are you going to the game? Are you going to either of the games this week in Ames?
Me and my dad were looking at ticket prices, and usually we can find somebody that will give us tickets. You know, isn't that hard? You know, we cannot find any of them that will give us tickets, and we can't find reasonable tickets on the secondary market. So probably not.
Okay.
But we thought about going into Tip Top and wearing our Iowa gear and see what happens.
Oh, Tip Top, boy, you're going top
tickets.
What?
Oh, of course. Yeah, let me just print some off here real quick, Gary.
Well, you talked about sneaking into Hilton. I've snuck into Hilton before, but I got in a little bit of trouble. But I was also 13.
Well, I'll be at the women's game Wednesday, so I just plan on hiding like somewhere in the bowels of Hilton and just staying there for the game the next day. No, in all reality, Hilton's been a house of horrors too. I mean, think about what happened the last time this team visited Ames 2 years ago. I mean, I know Iowa routed the Cyclones last year, and that I don't want to call that a fluke, but as well as Iowa shot, as poorly as Iowa State played that day, it kind of was. 2 years ago, Iowa just got dominated on the glass physically. And that was a stretch where they really were. I mean, they got dominated, I think, a few days later against Illinois at home. And I just don't know. I worry about an Otzelberger coach team with an Iowa team that has struggled tonight on the glass, struggled defensively mightily. You even made the comment, Doug, after coming back from San Diego, you think this might be the worst defensive team under Fran. I don't know that I would jump to that conclusion.
I said within a bomb three.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this game by itself proves anything moving forward. Gary, we've seen good teams, really good Iowa teams, get blown out at Mackey.
Oh yeah, it's. I've been there and gotten blown out, so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's they're usually very good, and it's a tough place to play. So, yeah, not surprising.
I have a couple questions before the other cooler people get on. First one is, did we do any zone match, switch our defense? I didn't really notice. Did you see any?
I didn't see any. I did not see any other than on out of bounds plays. No, which surprised me a little bit, but I don't think it would have made a whole lot of it. But no, I didn't see anything.
Is Edey the National Player of the Year, and do you just front him and try to hope that they don't get the ball? I mean, he'll get the ball. I was going to say on those we had a player when I used to joke about Reggie Evans when he played at Iowa. He used to say that a shot was a pass because the guy would get all the offensive rebounds. Is there anything you could do to slow him down, both on the offensive boards and just getting the ball inside?
Yeah, he's a handful. You know, you almost got to guard him with two guys. You can't. One guy is just not big enough to keep him. You know, you're in front of him, then they're just going to lob the thing over the top. He's so big, you work you up the lane and just lob it over. So, like we had said earlier, I think you got to hope they don't shoot well from three, and you can play off those guards a little bit more and try to get him a little farther away from the basket. If he gets it point blank where he can dunk it, it's over. And you got a few of those. And so you're really in a tough situation. If you come out real aggressive, then you've got no help. But a lot of those guys just sit there and pick you apart. Northwestern game, they didn't pass. I mean, he still got a lot of points, but they didn't pass the ball as well as they did tonight. So he's a handful. I think if they lose, it's probably going to be that they don't shoot the three well, and teams won't have to extend as much.
We were me and my father were watching the game on Friday, the Northwestern Purdue game, and he goes, "Boo Boo, he's still playing? How many years of eligibility he got?" Man, that guy had been there forever. He goes, but that's just
I give the kid credit. You know, he with the way that college basketball is now, he could have gone anywhere and played just about anywhere he wanted. And for him to stay at Northwestern and try to do something his last year. It's pretty impressive. It says something about him.
Well, I don't know what Zack Edey's getting paid at Purdue as it relates to NIL. He's got to be making something because he's another guy who could have easily left. And it's not like Michigan. I'm sure there's plenty of Michigan donors and opportunities up there. Look, Hunter Dickinson went into the portal last year, and now he's playing at Kansas. And I'm guessing that had to do partially with a bag, so to speak.
Well, I think it has everything to do with it. I think that's the main reason he's there. I don't think there's any question.
Well, look,
that's where he got the most money.
Last question is dealing with that, and I want to forget Purdue after this game. I don't know what the spread will be for Iowa State. I know that we've had our struggles at Hilton, but I think that Iowa State is a very winnable game. Well, I think every game is winnable, Corey. I'm a homer, but yeah, we have a chance. How or why will Zack Edey not play in the NBA, or what do you think his future looks like, Coach?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the big thing in him will be guarding. Guarding out on the perimeter. He doesn't have to do that now to a great extent. Being an outside threat, so he's going to have people that are big and strong and athletic that can compete with him in the post. And so if he can't go outside, if he can't guard outside, then he's going to be limited. The league is so athletic.
Yeah.
That's not one of his strengths, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. He's huge. And he's got a little bit of range. He hasn't had to show it yet because teams haven't been able to guard him inside, but it'll be an interesting thing to watch to see how he does. But the way the NBA game is now, it's going to be a tough transition for him.
And Tony, keep in mind, Taco Fall has not done anything in the league. Mm-hmm. And that dude was as big as, I think he's bigger than Edey. And
he's not as good as Edey, though.
I know he's not as skilled, but I'm just saying defensively, how do you put a guy like that in the court when everybody can shoot now and spread you out?
That's my point. Yeah.
It's just
that'll be a problem for him.
Well, I wanted to wish Tom, hopefully his surgery goes well, and one of you guys, hopefully maybe I'll see you guys Thursday. Talk to you. Best of luck against the Cyclones. Both games, women too, and hope everyone has a good night. Don't let a victory impact your value of life or a loss. It's just a game. I'm still the same person no matter what.
Thanks. Thank you, sir.
Speaking of the women, they're coming up to play Wisconsin this weekend. I think it's Sunday, and it's the first sellout for Wisconsin women's basketball in like 25 years. They average about 2,500 fans, and they're going to get close to 18,000 for that game.
So, I think it's safe to say that it will be mostly Hawkeye fans. Won't that be weird?
That'll be weird.
That'll be so strange in the Kohl Center, having a majority Iowa fan. Are you going?
No, actually, we were thinking about going. It's sold out, and I don't have any connections over there to get any tickets, so I'll probably just watch it on TV.
Yeah, incredible. Let's go to our next caller. We've got Corey, not me, different Corey. Corey's with us. Welcome, Corey.
Hey guys.
Who Corey's?
Yeah, I say, you ever seen The Matrix?
Yeah. Welcome to the show, sir.
Big one. Gosh, where do I start with this one? Are you guys good at breaking spells or something? Because every time they go to that Mackey Arena, man, it's like some voodoo magic something. They don't play like themselves at all, and it just seems like the shots aren't falling.
Well, I will say 2 years ago, this team was without Keegan Murray, and it was also, I think, the night before the Big Ten championship football game, Iowa-Michigan, so there were some similarities there. Iowa really competed. Remember, that press got them back into the game, Gary. And I wondered, Tom brought up how Purdue evaded that press. I'm not a basketball mind like you are, but I've used that defensive press that sometimes is successful for Fran as kind of a quirky thing that maybe I'm totally off on that, but it's kind of a shtick that he has that is either going to work or it's not. And to me, it's worked the last 2 years. In fact, when they played Purdue a year ago, I believe that game was at Mackey as well. It got Iowa back in that game. And today it just wasn't effective at all. And I just wonder if, once you beat me, shame on you. Twice you beat me, shame on me. And I think Painter wasn't going to let it happen again.
Well, I think they're well prepared. I'm sure they realize that they've had some struggles with it. Their guards played well. They're good. They've been a little up and down. But against pressure, that's what you need. You need real good, smart guard play, and both those guys did a nice job tonight.
Well, as Corey likes to say, what's the upside? And I love these freshmen. I love the freshmen. I think their ceiling is. I think we're going to have some really good players coming up, and it's going to take a learning curve, I think.
Well, let's piggyback off that, Corey, because Dustin in the chat talked about Brock Harding, and if there's a glimmer of fresh air from the couple of losses they've had, I thought Owen Freeman looked really good against Oklahoma. I thought Harding looked good tonight, and all the freshmen looked good at Creighton. So the young guys are showing up to these big games, Gary. What does that mean if you're a coach to see 4 true freshmen showing up at different points early in the season?
Yeah, it's great, and I think they'll only get better, and they're getting some great experience, some playing in tough places, and that's just going to help them down the road. No, I think they've all had their moments, and I think they all got a chance to contribute. So it's a nice looking class so far. The big question is how much better can they get? I mean, that's the huge thing.
I'd like to hear this from Coach, but to you, does it seem like the freshmen are playing more aggressive defense than the upperclassmen there? It seems when they're on the floor, it seems like they're a bit more defensively aggressive.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I really haven't seen that, but
that's what I've noticed. It just seems like
I haven't seen them play a lot, to be honest with you, but they certainly don't look like they're afraid of the moment. They're playing with a lot of confidence and certainly have had their moments. I like all of them.
You know my theory on that, don't you, Corey? You didn't want me to speak on that because you know my theory on that. I think traditionally under Fran, at least in the last 10 years, underclassmen play better defense, at least play with more effort on defense. And Gary, I'm sure you'd agree, part of a good portion of defense is effort. And I just feel like at times, I think about Joe Wieskamp. I thought he was better as an underclassman. I thought the Jordan Bohannon class, which included Cordell Pemsel and those guys, was better. They were better as freshmen and sophomores defensively. I think J-Bo got marginally better his senior year, his super senior year. To me, it almost seems like those young guys know they have to give great effort defensively to get on the court. And then once they're settled in and kind of a part of the rotation, I don't know if their performances drop off or if guys, the offense just no weaknesses like Tony Perkins. I thought he really defensively was really good his first and second years here. And he's okay now, but I don't know. Is there any substance to that theory?
There might be. There might be. Obviously, when you're young, you're trying to do anything to get minutes and get on the court. And there's a great way of doing it. So there might be some truth to that.
Anything else, Corey?
No, I just hope we get a good bounce back win against Iowa State.
Absolutely. Where's the doggy?
Sounds like a plan.
He's hanging out right here.
Remind me of the dog again. He bought this dog, Gary, in tribute to the show, didn't you, Corey?
Oh yeah, just for the show. I just felt like the show needed a mascot.
There you go.
He's gotten bigger since the last time.
No, he's going to get absolutely huge. I think he's going to be a really big guy.
There you go.
But Hawk is, no, he didn't enjoy the result tonight, but we're hoping for a better one come Wednesday and Thursday with the men's and women's. So
a lot of basketball ahead. Thanks, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Corey.
All right. Couple things here. A question from Jake in the chat, Gary, and we've talked about the press, but he wants to know, why did Fran continue to press tonight when it continues to get broke over and over again? I mean, Fran likes to mix things up. How would you answer that question?
Well, I think a lot of times with pressure, what you're hoping for is a spurt where all of a sudden, maybe a guard goes out or maybe they bring in a different inbounder or something like that. And all of a sudden, you get a run where they don't attack it as well, maybe from a substitute change or a lack of concentration, or maybe play a little bit better. And because they were down so much, I think he's looking for something that can maybe get him some quick baskets and make a little bit of a run. And like you had mentioned, they had struggled with it in the past. So it's like, hey, let's give it a go in hopes that something might happen. And unfortunately, it didn't.
All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Iowa Smokehouse is sponsoring our calls, so I appreciate them helping Corey and Doug jumping on here. And we've got another caller here. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
welcome back, Coach Close.
Good to be back.
Last Saturday, TCU was playing Georgetown, and it was less than a minute in the game, and Georgetown went down, made a 2-pointer. The game was tied. They made a 2-pointer. TCU inbounded the ball, ran up the sideline, chucked up a 3-pointer, desperation. It went in, and they went to the replay to see if the shot was good, and they noticed the player's heel was out of bounds, and the referees gave the victory to TCU because they said the only thing they could review was whether the shot was good or not, even though the player's heel was out of bounds.
Well, it's pretty. I mean, I'm not to interject and cut you off, Gary, but that's pretty much standard. That's how the rule book is set up. If it's a never-ending cycle, if you start making everything reviewable, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Yep. Tough break.
I did not see that, John, but that's unfortunate. That's all I can say. It's unfortunate, and I do think especially with football, there are things that are reviewable that shouldn't be. Things that I don't know that are real clear. Are they reviewable or not? I go back to the Cooper DeJean thing with the Minnesota game, and would that have been reviewable had Cooper DeJean not actually scored? I don't know the answer to that. So I think there's probably less of that conversation with basketball, but that's a good example of one. And that's a major game. It's a Power 5 versus Power 5 team, or I should say major team versus major, and, could pay dividends down the road in March.
Well, it's standard across, whether it be football, basketball, women's basketball. Either you can review it or you can't. I mean,
right. Yeah, exactly. And I would think if you're reviewing a play and you see a guy's out of bounds, I mean, to me, certainly with football, I believe the rule is if a guy steps out of bounds on a scoring play, they can review it. But I believe they can actually review it on a non-scoring play as well. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to do the same with basketball. The problem is, Gary, with football, you have one play at a time and opportunities to review. How do you do that with basketball? Stop the flow of the game to check to see if a guy stepped out?
Yeah, right. No, I think in that case, they're just checking whether they got the shot off in time, and they can't go beyond that.
well, I don't. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like it ought to be a uniform for basketball and football both.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I said that. I instantly went back to Cooper DeJean in the Minnesota game, and I thought, wait a minute. But that's all I got. So thanks, guys.
Thank
for
you,
the
John.
call.
Boy, there's been some weird officiating things, and I don't know. Has officiating gotten worse over the years to you, Gary, or is it just me?
I think it is.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
I don't either. But you're usually one to say, just kind of tone me down and calm me down. And in fact, you've told me to calm down before, word for word.
I don't know.
But what's interesting about it is it does seem like in both sports, football and basketball, it maybe every college and NFL, it just seems like every year there's just more. I don't know if it's bureaucracy or I don't know. Lunacy is what it is. But anyways, this was not the reason Iowa lost tonight.
Yeah, no. And they got so many doggone cameras now. They expose their mistakes. I mean, they can wind that thing down and get it from every angle, and it's a tough job. I'm glad I don't have to do it.
All right, let's go to our next caller. We've got our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line with Ryan on hold. Ryan, welcome.
Gentlemen, good evening. Hey, Coach Close, thanks again for doing this year. It's great to talk to you. It's always an honor. Real quick about officiating. Back in the day, I remember Ed Hightower was kind of the guy that everybody gave a hard time about and thought was a terrible official. I actually thought he was a pretty solid official, but it's absolutely gotten worse. And football is even worse than basketball, in my opinion, Crooked Courtney notwithstanding. You implied that you watched the Northwestern Purdue game, correct?
I saw a little bit of it, yep.
So I did not. I just saw the score. And I know Bo Bowie is a phenomenal player, but do you have a feel for, what did Northwestern do to stop this juggernaut that we couldn't do?
Yeah.
I don't, they have one loss this year to, I believe it's Mississippi State, lost by about 8 points, but they're 6 or 7-1. But I don't think of Northwestern as a great program as a whole, but they sure showed up. What did they do to stop this? Because I don't believe they're overall more talented than us, with the exception of one guy.
Yeah, they've got a nice team. Now, they had a good year last year. Got in the NCAA tournament, won a game. Their guards are good. They may have the best backcourt in the league, and they made shots. They did not turn the ball over. I mentioned Bowie had 9 assists, no turnovers.
Wow.
The Purdue guards did not play as well, did not shoot as well. Purdue was in control most of the game, and then kind of let Northwestern hang around, and then they made some big shots and got them with got them just by a couple of possessions. So Northwestern's pretty good. They got a transfer from Princeton that can really shoot, can really play. They got some guys back, some veteran guys back, so they're not going to overwhelm you, but they're well coached and they've got terrific guard play, which can really, really keep you in games.
What percentage would you say your gut feel that they make it to the tournament?
Will Northwestern make it to the tournament?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question, because the league looks like right now it's not as strong as it's been in the past. They're still going to get a bunch in, but maybe not as many as they have in the past. So they're probably right there with Iowa. They're probably a bubble team, but that win will certainly help big time. And they got a shot. They got a shot, especially with those guards.
And I guess I'll just leave it as, this isn't the first time we had a relative massacre in West Lafayette, only to get better as the season rolled on and either, made the tournament or at least had a season that was enjoyable enough. So it's very possible that we end up being in that mix at the end. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with Owen's development. And, I thought it was kind of interesting. Robbie Hummel was talking about Tony Perkins, and Corey, do you know what he said?
Who? Say that again.
Robbie Hummel was talking about Tony Perkins, and you know what comment he made?
Well, I listened to the game, but I don't remember. Fill me in.
He said this. He said Tony Perkins could be Iowa's alpha dog. I had to laugh.
Oh, I did hear that.
I had to laugh.
Well,
so maybe I'm not totally nuts.
But there are times, Ryan, where his level of, and we've said this before, I've made the comment to Gary, he shows flashes and spurts where he's looking for contact. He can rebound effectively. He's very athletic. He shows flashes from behind the arc. His biggest issue is consistency. And I know that's the hardest thing to teach, right, Gary? But if he could just consistently do what he does, he's got a great mid-range games. He makes free throws. He battles down low. I really like him. He's got a great attitude, but he's just got to figure out a way to be consistent, and the clock's ticking.
And last real quick question, because I got to roll. Coach, I assume you're going to say right now Purdue is still probably the best team in the Big Ten, but who would you call number 2 and number 3? Would it be Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan State? What's your gut feel for the next 2?
Yeah, that's a real good question. I have not seen a lot of the teams. Just looking at Michigan State has played a brutal schedule,
right,
and have taken some knots because of it. And the game I saw them play, they were horrendous from the perimeter, and they could not make a shot, and really, really hurt them. My tendency would be to say they're probably the second best team. Illinois is those 2 kids they got back are good players. And I think Wisconsin can be sneaky. They got 5 starters back. I mean, that's unheard
Beat
of.
Marquette.
And they beat Marquette fairly easily. Marquette made a little run in the beginning of the second half to get it down to 1, and then they got it right back up to 10 pretty quickly and beat them relatively easily. Now they got a really tough week this week. They go to Michigan State tomorrow, and they go to Arizona on Saturday. So we'll know a lot more about Wisconsin, at the end of this week. But it's pretty wide open. I don't know if there's anybody there you go, wow, they're. I think it's going to be an interesting race, other than Purdue.
That's all I have. And Coach, thanks again for taking your time. And Corey, we'll talk to you soon.
You bet.
Right. Thank you, sir. All right, rolling along here with our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, and I do have official stats before we get to Jim, who's on hold. I've got some official stats to share with everybody. Let me pull them back up here. I had them a second ago. Now they're gone. Okay, here they are. So as I mentioned earlier, our RTI Threads player of the game is Tony Perkins. I just thought his the tenacity, the energy he brought on both ends is going to be really invaluable for this team moving forward, and handles the ball a lot, had just 1 turnover on the night. Of course, it wasn't enough, and he did struggle to shoot the ball. He was 5 of 14 from the field. And speaking of struggling, Peyton Sandfort was 3 of 10. They need better numbers from him. And did add 4 rebounds, but just 9 points for Peyton. Had 4 assists, a turnover. Desante Bowen, quiet again, made a 3 early, ended up with 3 points, 4 assists. Again, young guy, not consistent enough. And I know, Gary, it's hard to drive the ball when you've got a
tree in the middle.
What'd you call him?
A tree.
I was going to say a beanstalk, but yeah, it's just unbelievable. And so I understand that. And that's why I think our listener earlier who brought up Brock Harding's play, I thought he navigated. I know he didn't play a ton of minutes with Edey in the game, but when Edey was in there and Brock was in there, I thought Brock was played maybe older than he is.
Mm-hmm.
And, didn't turn the ball over. And that's always a positive. Just had 1 assist, but 7 points for Brock, 3 of 7 from the field, made a 3-pointer.
I thought he looked good.
14 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked the way he played.
Need more from Josh Dix. He was 0-2 from the floor. He's going to handle the ball a lot. Going to get opportunities, just 2 points. I wish he'd be a little bit more assertive on the offensive end. Didn't turn the ball over, and Iowa doesn't turn the ball. I mean, Iowa had, as bad as Iowa played in some areas, just had 8 turnovers on the road at Mackey. Again, impressive numbers. They don't turn the ball over, but Owen Freeman was 2 of 5 from the floor, 6 points, 2 assists for Freeman, no turnovers, 2 steals as well. And he's also going to be somewhat of a rim protector for the Hawks. He had a block shot this evening. Ben Krikke ended up leading all scorers, 16 points, 7 rebounds. Did get called for 4 personal fouls, had 3 turnovers, a steal, and an assist. Patrick was 1 of 5, 8 points, 2 assists, 5 rebounds. Gary, I've been very vocal on Patrick McCaffrey. He's got some skills you can't teach. He's got good athleticism for his size. He's got length. He's got some physical disadvantages, and I'm guessing some of that's because of some of the health challenges he's dealt with in his life. But I get so frustrated with him. To me, at times, he just drives the ball inside, and he'll just kind of go off one leg and throw up circus shots. And I know some people will say, well, that's just his game, and sometimes they go in. But when you look at a box score like this and you're 1 of 5, it's like, man, I wish he'd take better shots, but he is aggressive.
Yeah, they need him to play better. He's one of their veteran players, and for them to have success, he's got to play better, and he knows it. It's early, and hopefully he'll get it going because he's a better player than the way he's playing now.
I'll tell you, Laji Dembele is struggling right now with his shot. He shot pretty well in the first couple games. He is a freshman. To me, his shot does not look confident right now. Played 10 minutes, was 0-2 from the floor with 0 points. Had a turnover, 1 rebound. Price Sandfort, 2 of 3 from the floor, had 5 points, all coming in the last minute. Evan Bronze played a few minutes tonight, really for the first time, consequential minutes for the Iowa City natives.
Yeah, I thought he was active. I thought he had some moments.
I think he's their best interior defender. And I know I'm sure Fran would love to be able to combine the offensive skill set of Ben Krikke with the defense and rebounding and athleticism of Evan Bronze. But the reality is you may have to sacrifice some offense at times when you're struggling to guard on the interior. So anyways, those are our stats from tonight. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got Jim on hold. Jim, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, I'm sending myself on the screen here. As you might be able to tell, I've been a Hawkeye fan for a long time, going back to the Ralph Miller days. So I've seen this team through the years. Coach Close, big fan of yours.
Thank you.
Did a great job both here and up in Wisconsin. And I'd like to see you on the bench, actually, but that may not be in the cards. Anyhow.
I actually coached against Ralph Miller when he was at Oregon State.
Did you really?
Yeah. We were at Stanford and played them. He had some great teams up there. Terrific coach, great guy. That was a really tough place to play, and partly because his teams were really good. But he's a terrific coach.
I was sad when he left.
Yeah.
But we replaced him with some good coaches at Stanford. You were with Dr. Tom, and then came to Iowa with him, which is terrific.
Yeah.
Hey, I got kind of I want to share my opinion and then get your opinion. I watched the Hawkeye game Saturday night, and I thought Brian Ferentz acted like a child when he blew up over that fumble, incomplete pass thing. I know it's emotional. I know those guys put their heart and soul into it. But to me, you got to act a little bit more mature than to just flip off like he did. And then tonight, in the first half, Fran loses it. He's got to be restrained by his coaches. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why a grown man can't control his emotions better than, Brian, we don't have to worry about anymore. But Fran, he does this too often. And I just, am I being too sensitive? Or am I making a big deal out of nothing that all coaches lose their minds occasionally? I mean, it's early in the season. This wasn't a game for the Big Ten championship or anything. And it's embarrassing as a Hawkeye fan, but maybe I'm too easily embarrassed.
Yeah, no, it's a tough call there. It's you don't know exactly what's going on. They're very competitive people. They're frustrated. You'd like to. One of the things that was so impressive with Coach Davis was how well he could keep his emotions under wraps, even though I used to love it. He'd be screaming at the officials, but he'd be clapping, like they're doing a great job, but he'd be ripping at the same time. So there's a little bit of art to that. So everybody's a little bit different. And, that the T tonight didn't come back to haunt him, obviously, too much with the outcome of the game. But
right.
It's a fine line there. It's tough to say.
I kind of wonder how that affects the assistant coaches and the players too, though. They see the head coach kind of.
Yeah, in some cases it can work, and in some cases it's not. In some cases the players, hey, he's backing us up, we like it, and things like that. It's a real fine line there between crossing the line and knowing when to do it, knowing when not to, and in some cases, the frustration is so great that that's hard to control. So I've been there. I know what it's like. So when people can control it, you appreciate that.
Well, thanks, guys. Corey, appreciate the show. Both during the football season and now it's basketball season. Look forward to more episodes.
We'll call back.
Thank you, sir.
Will do.
Yeah.
I understand Jim's frustration. I don't disagree. And I think it's very clear they are not helped as it relates to program support when your coach is known for flying off the handle. It does not help the NIL sphere and the collective that relies on the big money people and just donors in general. And that's one thing. I've said it on the air. I've been very critical of Kirk Ferentz in recent time. I've been very critical of Brian Ferentz. However, I think it's fair to say, and other people who are much more connected to this stratosphere than I am have made this comment, that the donors in general would be much more apt to support Kirk Ferentz right now. And part of that is because football's king, but there are other programs. I guarantee you, if Coach Davis were here, and I'm not trying to compare Fran with with Dr. Tom, but very different personalities, right? I mean, I think there was probably, I wasn't really alive during much of that. Isn't that crazy? Does that make you feel
It is
old?
crazy.
But
It does.
when you think about it, I'm guessing if the NIL era were around right now, Dr. Tom probably wouldn't have liked it, but I'm guessing that the basketball donors would have gladly supported it. Is that fair? Because of how he carried himself?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. Anybody, he carried himself as well as anybody in any sport. Just an incredibly classy guy. Not only publicly, but the way he treated his players. I mean, it's just
right.
That's just the way he was. That was part of his makeup, and that's the way he wanted his teams to play. And I know, incredibly classy, and I do think the fans of Iowa appreciated that, because that's kind of the Midwestern values and work ethic and things like that. So that did go well with that type of thing.
All right, last call on the phone lines. We just hit an hour, so we're wrapping things up. Do appreciate DC Hawkeye with the super chat. Corey and Coach, nice show tonight. Corey, nice question to Coach Ferentz yesterday. Coach Ferentz. Oh, okay, he's talking about Kirk. I'm like, still in basketball mode. The question that I asked to Coach Ferentz was a question. If people missed it, I did post to the channel. It is one that I kind of figured I'd hear the answer to, the answer that Kirk gave. I give him credit. He's very consistent on who he plays, especially at the quarterback position. Very consistent. I guess I can ask you the question, Gary, not even talking about football, but as it relates, and I asked, is it Coach Heppel, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, the Tennessee football coach. Of course, Iowa facing Tennessee down in the Citrus Bowl here in about a month. But I asked him the question after Kirk's press conference. I said, Coach, how do you balance what you see in practice versus what you see on game day? Because it's very clear as it relates to Iowa football, Gary, Kirk has said as much over and over and over again that we evaluate based on practice, and we believe so-and-so, either it's Spencer Petras or Deacon Hill, this guy gives us the best chance in a game. The problem is, to me, this is my own narrative, my own commentary, that what happens in the game doesn't seem to matter to certain people, because a guy can perform any way he wants in practice, go out in the field and, turn the ball over and commit the cardinal sins as it relates to the game, and still maintain his spot because of what he's doing in practice. How do you balance those two things?
Yeah, that's a real good question. And you got to go with your gut. You think who gives you the best chance to win the game, and that's based on, obviously, on practice. It's based on how they're playing, and there's a lot of things that go into that. And so that's a real tough. You want to give the guy confidence. It's a fine line. It's a big part of coaching, and it's not easy.
And I have not been critical about Fran not playing Evan Bronze. I've questioned it because I think, again, based on his kind of his reputation, what he did at Belmont, I think he could help Iowa in an area where they have need. But again, I'm not there at practice ever, and we get a very small glimpse into Iowa football during spring, during fall. We're not there week to week. But it's a fair question. And the reason I brought it up to Coach Ferentz is because we saw him and I brought this up to him, we saw Iowa make a second half change against Nebraska at kicker when Drew Stevens was struggling in the Heroes game. And Marshall Meter comes in, never had seen the field at Iowa, comes in, makes a game-winning kick. And my question was simply, when do you apply that to the quarterback position and say, hey, maybe Deacon Hill is performing better in practice than Marco Lainez and Joe Labus? We don't know that. The coaches, that's what they're claiming. Why not give Marco a chance, even if it's a few plays to shine? Such an important position on the field, but obviously there's just a difference in philosophy, and Kirk's been doing it a long time. So, okay, a couple things before we wrap up here. Again, appreciate DC Hawkeye. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for being here, everybody. Appreciate you being a part of the show. A couple things before we go. Just a reminder that Iowa, the men, will take on Iowa State Thursday. That game is on ESPNU at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. It will be televised on ESPNU from Hilton Coliseum here in Ames. And, of course, on Wednesday evening, I'm grabbing I want to make sure I have the correct time. So it's actually said 6:30. So I'm glad I looked at this. 6 p.m. The Iowa women will take on Iowa State. That game will be on ESPN2 as well as ESPN Plus if you have the Plus. Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Time. So I'm just updating this so we have it correct on the banner. The 4th-ranked Hawkeye women taking on unranked Iowa State, but an Iowa State team that will be ready to go. That's always an entertaining series, and I know that game will be rocking as well. Should be a fun couple of days inside Hilton Coliseum. You coming down for that game, right, Gary?
No, I won't. I won't be down for that one, but I might catch it on TV though.
Yeah, boy, the women are bringing a new. You made the
I would have
comment.
liked to come down the other day when Ted Lasso was there.
See, I don't get the whole Ted Lasso hype because I never watched.
Have you watched the show?
No, not really. No,
Oh,
I've seen clips.
Great show.
Wow,
really, you should watch it. It's a terrific show.
All right, well, you're not the only one that thinks
I've
that.
actually watched it twice.
Okay, you've watched the whole thing. It's a series, right?
Yeah,
and you
not
watched
incredibly long. I think it's 3 seasons, and there's about 8 to 10 45-minute sessions. So
okay,
it's really good. It's a great show.
I honestly, I would not have recognized what's his face had I not seen the post from Iowa. So that's how little I know about Ted Lasso. But I did know he was there. And who else was? It wasn't Sue Bird there. I think she was there.
Bird was there too. Yeah, they came from Kansas, doing a little college basketball tour.
Yeah,
living the life.
Rick wanted to know. This is more a question for Coach Ferentz, but again, since we're talking coaching, he wants to know. He said a question I would have asked Kirk Ferentz. Have any of your players expressed their intention to skip the bowl game? How do you feel about that? When nowadays with NIL and early draft entries, guys skipping the postseason. I know you coach different sport, but guys skipping the postseason for either their own health or for the portal or come what may.
Yeah, I guess off the top of my head, I don't like it, but I also understand it. That I guess it depends on the level of the bowl game.
Sure.
You don't want to run the risk of ripping your knee up and costing yourselves all kinds of money. So I get it. Kind of old school and hey, let's finish the year out with your guys. But I guess I see it both ways. That's a pretty weak answer.
No, I appreciate you being here, Gary. Despite the circumstances, better times are ahead. This is about as hard of a game as the schedule.
they very well may not lose a game at home this year. It would not surprise me. So. Unfortunately, we were the first one, but they're good and coming off a loss. There was a lot of reasons why it was going to be a tough battle, even beyond how good they are.
And Iowa shot just 39% on the game. They are, as it was brought up during the broadcast, one of the most efficient offensive teams in this conference. Folks, I'll be back with you. I'll be back with you throughout the week. We'll have content dropping tomorrow with football and the transfer portal and full flux. We've got a number of announcements that have already dropped, and so we'll be covering that tomorrow. Then Wednesday, as I said, we've got Iowa women's basketball post-game coverage following the game in Hilton, and then on Thursday, following the men's game, hopefully we're talking about a couple of wins because then they get another short turnaround on Sunday against Michigan, and opportunity knocks. I mean, from here on out, you're going to have a few games after Michigan where, they should be cruise to victory type of wins. But for the most part, it's a Big Ten gauntlet from here on out, Gary.
You need to win at home. You got to win as many games at home as possible, especially if you want to stay in the conversation as far as NCAA tournament things go. So that's a big game. No doubt. All
right, folks, for Coach Gary Colosso and Corey Brada, here's what we're going to do. Gary and I are both going to exit. But what I'm going to do is just got audio of Fran McCaffrey's post-game presser from Purdue, audio only. So we'll go ahead and share that. Appreciate everybody being here. We'll talk to you very, very soon here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Have a great night.
Go right into questions for Coach.
Fran, Elliot Fluff right here. Obviously, difficult matching up with a guy like Zack. Can you just explain what makes it so difficult to match up with a guy like that?
Well, I think, he's difficult, but I think you have to give credit to the rest of the guys that are out there for them. They really executed tonight in terms of screening and cutting and ball movement, which makes it really hard. If you're trying to focus on him, they obviously they're not a one-man show at all. They have shooters, they have drivers, they have size. So, they stretch your defense in ways that makes it very difficult. I thought we could do better than we did. We really worked hard this week, but I think you got to give credit to that team collectively. With all due respect to the guy that got 25 and 12, I just think the rest of that team was really good tonight.
Fran, what does Vance Jones add to them this year?
Well, he just gives them another weapon. I mean, I think he fits with Matt's style. He's an athlete. He can push it. He can play fast. He can play half court. He can make threes. He works hard defensively. Fits obviously their style on defense. Kind of in your face. So you add a veteran guy like that, it impacts your program. Now you're bringing guys like Gillis, and Ethan Morton, and Caleb First off the bench to be starting for most teams.
Coach, we'll forget about this game tonight, but let's talk about your team for this season. What are you seeing with your team this season, moving forward?
Well, I got to keep getting those young guys some minutes. I think got quality minutes tonight. I think they learned. And there's just no substitute for that unless you play in this environment against a team of that caliber and you figure out what you can do and what doesn't work. I think our offense, and we were just talking as a staff, our offense got really east and west. And that's a credit to the defense and the pressure. We were trying to move it and get some shot opportunities, but we just got way too east and west and not enough north and south.
Fran, I know you've preached as not getting too high after wins or too low after losses. Is there anything, I guess, after a game like this you have to do to just make sure that the mental of the guys is staying high, or do you let them kind of resolve that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's a really terrific group of young guys. We have veteran guys in there that are going to take care of that. I mean, I didn't try to invent things that happened or didn't happen and scream and yell. And, all right, we didn't do some things we thought we could try to do. Let's try to do them better. Let's watch the film. Let's try to get better and be better on Thursday night. We have to be moving forward because, the teams that we play in this league and obviously the next two games have athletes like this team. So we just have to do a better job of executing our stuff and rebounding the ball.
Two more questions.
Fran, you mentioned getting your young guys minutes. For Matt, Braden and Fletcher Lawyer played a ton of minutes last year, and I think when you played here, you had success in the second half trying to speed them up. How have they grown from year one to year two now that you've seen them in this season?
Yeah, well, they're not an easy team to press. They're not an easy team to get out of rhythm. I think everybody that they play will be trying to do that. But, even in, the loss they had, I mean, they still executed their stuff and they were in rhythm. They had a chance. The game goes overtime. So, we turned them over a few more times last year probably than they did. But they didn't do that much the rest of the year, and they haven't done it this year. It's not who they are.
Fran, a string of losses here at Mackey, obviously a loud environment. Does that make it difficult for the guys to communicate or anything like that on the floor?
I think anytime you play on the road, it's difficult to communicate. That's why you have to be connected at both ends. You're still able to make play calls. If you want to run plays, we're primarily a motion team anyway, so we're not making a lot of play calls. So, that's what the road environment is supposed to be. It was tonight.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Fran.
We'll go over by our one.